Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, Counter Spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the inner sanctum.
Mr. and Mrs. Cary-Grant and Betsy-Drake in an episode of the 1951 series Mr. and Mrs. Blandings, based on the motion picture Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House. This episode from 72 years ago today, April 29th, 1951, the girls of today, and you know this wouldn't be politically correct if it was made today. Thank you for tuning in on this Saturday. This is the 29th of April, 119th day of the year, 246 days remaining until we get to 2024. Maryland's House of Delegates voted not to secede from the Union in 1861. In 1862, New Orleans fell to Union forces under Admiral David Farragut. 1945, the German army in Italy unconditionally surrendered to the Allies. Also in 1945, Adolf Hitler married his longtime partner Eva Braun in a Berlin bunker and designated Admiral Karl Donitz as his successor. Both would commit suicide the following day. Also in 1945 on this date, the Dachau concentration camp liberated by U.S. troops.
I remember like being born again, and we were very happy, and I saw a prisoner who died when he heard the news. He couldn't get up, he couldn't move, and then he just fell over.
One of the survivors, 31,601 prisoners saved. After refusing induction into the Army the day before this date in 1967, citing religious reasons, Muhammad Ali stripped of his heavyweight title. In 1970, U.S. and South Vietnamese forces invaded Cambodia to hunt Viet Cong. In 1974, President Nixon announced the release of edited transcripts of White House tape recordings related to the Watergate scandal.
The impeachment of a president is a remedy of last resort. It is the most solemn act of our entire constitutional process. Now, regardless of whether or not it succeeded, the action of the House in voting a formal accusation requiring trial by the Senate would put the nation through a wrenching ordeal it has endured only once in its lifetime, a century ago, and never since America has become a world power with global responsibilities. The impact of such an ordeal would be felt throughout the world, and it would have its effect on the lives of all Americans for many years to come.
The House would approve impeachment proceedings on July 27, 1974, and on August 8th, President Nixon would resign. In 1975, the last U.S. citizens began evacuating from Saigon prior to an expected North Vietnamese takeover.
Oh, God. Oh, Jesus.
Run over.
Oh, no, a child has been run over. Oh, my God. Oh, a child has been run over. Oh, God. Panic has overtaken this evacuation procedure. We just run over a child. We've been driving around Saigon trying to get into Tanzania Airport. Now we're taken down to the port. There's a mob scene there, Vietnamese everywhere, surrounding us, trying to get on. In an effort to get away, we run over a child. We ran right over the child's leg.
And with the evacuation, U.S. involvement in the war came to an end. On this date in 1992, riots in Los Angeles following the acquittal of police officers charged with excessive force in the beating of Rodney King. Over the next 3 days, 53 people killed, hundreds of buildings destroyed.
This is a travesty. You saw that he was beaten very seriously, and he got away scot-free. They got away scot-free. They sent a message to the community, you're in trouble.
bunch of bigoted jurors in there that have no idea what it is to be other than white, and that's the whole truth. I mean, you know, you hear about lynchings out in Mississippi and other countries. I mean, other states. This is a lynching.
This is a political lynching, is what it was.
In several cases, motorists were dragged from their cars and beaten. Some witnesses say the rioters cheered and raised their arms in victory as a truck driver was attacked and sent to the hospital in critical condition.
I'm very hopeful that the calm can be restored to this very important part of our country and that goodwill will prevail over the hatred that we've seen in the streets.
Can't keep doing this, killing and hurting innocent people. That's wrong. Whatever color you are, it's wrong. Wrong is wrong.
Just want to say, you know, can we all get along? Can we get along?
The violence will end. Justice will be served. Hope will return.
What does it say that the last two voices you heard were in agreement? The man who was beaten, Rodney King, and President George Herbert Walker Bush, all in agreement. Why can't we all just get along? Why is it more important to be right than to have a little bit of peace? It's a difficult position. I understand it. Also taking place on this date in history, Dick Cheney, President Bush, testifying before the 9/11 Commission in 2004 in a closed, unrecorded hearing in the Oval Office. Oldsmobile building its final car on this date in 2004, ending 107 years of production. And a baseball game between the Baltimore Orioles and the Chicago White Sox set the all-time low attendance record for Major League Baseball in 2015. 0 fans in attendance. The stadium officially closed to the public due to the Baltimore riots. Passing away on this date in history, fine director Alfred Hitchcock, and a very dry sense of humor as well, and columnist Mike Royko. Birthdays today include William Randolph Hearst, Thomas Beecham, great jazz pianist Duke Ellington, actor Tom Ewell, the Mills brothers Donald Mills, actress Celeste Holm, football coach George Allen, Toots Thielman, a wonderful harmonica player, musician Lonnie Donegan. Does your chewing gum lose its flavor on the bedpost overnight? Rod McEwen, Tammy Terrell, and race car driver Dale Earnhardt. April Stevens from Nino Temple and April Stevens, Deep Purple, 94 years old today. Willie Nelson is 90. Larry on Three's Company, Richard Klein, 79. Tommy James and the Shondells, Crimson and Clover, Crystal Blue Persuasion, 76 years old today, Tommy James. The first high school athlete to beat the 4-minute mile, Jim Ryan from Kansas, also a congressman from Kansas, 76 years old today. Saturday Night Live's Nora Dunn is 71. Jerry Seinfeld is 69. From Ryan's Hope and Star Trek Voyager, Kate Mulgrew, 68. Daniel Day-Lewis, 66. Michelle Pfeiffer, 65. The real Jan Brady, Eve Plum, 65. The daughter of Brian Wilson, you remember her from Wilson Phillips, Carney Wilson's 55. From Private Practice, Paul Adelstein is 54. From Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill, Uma Thurman, 53. Smallville and ER, Sam Jones III is 40. And from 13 Reasons Why and Spontaneous, Catherine Langford is 27. Those just a few of the people celebrating the 29th day of April as their birthday. And if this happens to be your birthday...
Hi, we're the 4 freshmen, and we just want to say, Happy birthday to you.
And we go back 72 years on this Saturday to April 29th, 1951. Cary Grant and his wife, Betsy-Drake, in an episode of Mr. and Mrs. Blandings. That's next, here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station. Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, we go back 72 years. Sponsored by TWA, a long-gone airline. Cary Grant, Betsy-Drake, Mr. and Mrs. Blanding, from April 29th, 1951.
Flying's the way to travel, and the way to fly is TWA, Trans World Airlines. Presenting Cary Grant and Betsy-Drake as Mr. and Mrs. Blandings in a new series based on Eric Hodgins' best-selling novels, Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House and Blandings Way. Did you know that approximately every 3 minutes around the clock, a TWA Skyliner is making a landing at one of the airports along its 32,000-mile route?
You love to fly high up in the sky. You ride the airways, starry stairways.
Smoother and swifter, flying's the way.
And the best way to fly, TWA.
Mr. and Mrs. Blandings, starring Cary Grant and Betsy-Drake. As you know, Jim and Muriel Blandings always tried to be good parents to their two children, Susan and Joan. They've read books on child care, and they've attended lectures on child care. And from their wealth of experience, they have learned one thing, which, as Jim Blandings puts it, is
child psychology is the answer. Child psychology is proven. Child psychology is tested. Our children always use child psychology, and we're the best trained parents in town.
Muriel is well-trained, too. And so it was with quiet competence that she met the situation last night when her 9-year-old daughter, Susan, appeared and said,
I won't be home for dinner tonight, Mother.
No? Why not, dear?
I'm going to run away and get married.
Susan, you can't do that. This is a school night. Now go wash your face.
Mother, look at this article.
Let's see, the girls of today should prepare to become the mothers of tomorrow.
Well, that's true, isn't it?
Yes. As a matter of fact, if they don't, I wouldn't know who to tell to get ready. But still, I say you're too young. What's that noise outside?
Oh, that must be Johnny now. Hi, Johnny.
Hi, Susan. You still want to elope?
Why not?
This ladder is awful heavy.
Oh. Well, I'm not sure it's proper, but I'll come down and help you.
Just a minute, Susan. Johnny.
Hi, Miss Blandings.
Johnny, you stay right there. I'm coming down and have a talk with you.
Uh-oh.
And you stay right here, young lady. I'll talk with you later.
Hello, darling.
Jim, I didn't know you were home yet.
Just walked in the door.
Well, you better walk right back out again. You have a fatherly duty to perform.
Oh?
Johnny Miller is waiting outside to elope with Susan.
Johnny Miller and Susan? Muriel, have you been nipping at the raspberry cordial?
Jim, this is serious. Look out that side window.
All right. Great Scott! He's putting up a ladder.
You see, he could slip and come smashing to the ground.
With my good ladder.
Yes, and carrying one of your best daughters.
I'll bring him in for a talk right away. Well, Johnny, it seems like a good time for a man-to-man talk.
Man-to-man? Gee, thanks.
Don't mention it, and try to keep your voice from changing. Now, sit right here, my boy.
Yes, sir.
Cigar?
Not right now, thank you.
A drink, perhaps. Anything you say.
Coke is my drink.
Mixer?
Straight.
Good boy. Yo, 2 fingers of coke. Neat. Now, you want to marry my daughter, eh?
Well, I guess so, sir.
You guess so?
It's something to do.
Yeah, it certainly is. So you decided to take Susan for your wife, eh?
Yes, sir. It was either her or Agnes, and Agnes wears bands.
How's that?
A fellow wouldn't want a girl who has her teeth wired in.
Of course not. Of course not. She might rust. Now, look, Johnny, don't you think Susan might be a little young for marriage? She's only 9.
That's the right time. Get them while they're like putty in your hands.
Because I remember I had somewhat the same idea. Because my wife was 20 when I married her.
That's okay for you. Personally, I wouldn't take a chance on an old maid.
I was in no position to shop around. Johnny, I hate to intrude with mundane matters, but wives have a nasty habit. They expect husbands to provide them with little luxuries like shoes.
Oh, Susan has shoes. I've noticed.
You're very observing. Now, supposing you're married to her. Those shoes wear out. She's got to have new ones. Then what do?
We just have a fight about it.
I see.
Then she goes home to her mother and dad.
Yeah?
While she's there, she has them buy her new pair of shoes.
You've got the situation pretty well figured out, haven't you?
Sure, I know these things. I listen to the radio. That's how John does it to his other wife.
Now, Johnny, I'm afraid we can't permit Susan to be your other wife.
No?
No, I'm sorry, but I think it best that you wait until you're both a little older. I want you to finish grammar school and high school and college. And finally, when you have a fine job with a future, come back and we'll have another talk.
Will you give me another Coke?
I'll put one in the icebox now so it'll be cold.
Okay, it's a deal. Shake.
Shake.
I hope the steak is all right.
It's fine, Maud.
Well, eat slow. At the price the butcher charged for that steak, you can't afford to swallow fast. Price control.
You know, something's got to be done about Susan.
No, Jim, Susan's just going through a phase. Think back. Didn't you have any young loves?
What, at the age of 9? Well, hardly.
No interest in the opposite sex?
At that stage, the only thing I knew about sex was that it came after 5. Well, of course, I admit, I did follow one girl home from school. But that was only to see the billy goat she had in the backyard.
And to think I was flattered when you courted me.
Yes.
Well, eat your dinner and don't worry about Johnny and Susan. It's not serious.
Not serious? Muriel, imagine what the neighbors would think of us if those two had run off. What kind of parents would have a 9-year-old daughter running off to get married?
Move over, Lem. You're standing on Grandpa.
Muriel.
No, by heck, it's Grandma. Hard to tell. They're both wearing the same color flour sacks.
Were you calling me Mrs. Blandings?
Yup, Emmy Lou. Bring in the corn squeezins and a chaw of tobacco. What?
Oh, that is Mrs. Blanding's bucolic way of suggesting that you may serve the coffee and cigarettes.
Yes, Mr. Blandings.
Oh, Maud, have you looked in at Susan?
Oh, yes. She's lying there in bed with the sweetest, most innocent smile on her face. Fell sound asleep listening to that radio program, Gruesome Murder Tales. I'll get the coffee.
That's it, Muriel.
That's what, dear?
Well, that's the trouble with Susan and all her friends. All the kids know today they learn from soap operas and jazz records and television. Why, you might say that their brain food is all canned.
There's some truth to that. Of course, they go to school.
Well, school's fine, but it was after school that we lived. Games, hiking, camping. Muriel, let's get Susan started in the Girl Scouts tomorrow.
Well, Jim, there aren't any Girl Scout groups in Lansdale.
All right, then the Campfire Girls.
No Campfire Girls, no Bluebirds, not even any Boy Scouts. If you want a good deed done, you have to send to New Haven.
Well, that's going to be changed. I've got a good mind to bring it up before the Civic Committee meeting tonight.
What? And interrupt their poker game?
Before it starts. I'll get up before them and I'll say, Gentlemen, The trouble with our modern children is that their knowledge of the world is gained from soap operas and jazz records and television. What was that phrase I used? I thought it was rather clever at the time. What was that?
Oh, yes. The one that goes, their brain food is all canned. Shall I write it down?
Oh, no need for that. I'll think of something to say on the spur of the moment.
April 29th, 1951, Mr. and Mrs. Blandings on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. The news from 72 years ago today follows these messages from your favorite radio station. For a very long time, you've heard me talk about My Pillow, and of course the My Pillow products are fascinating. My Slippers, which are on special right now, all of the sheets and the pillows and the pillowcases, and all the wonderful things. But did you know that American entrepreneurs have gotten together with Mike Liddell to form My Store? A whole line of products made by American entrepreneurs, including health products, garden and patio, food and drink. If you're a coffee drinker, check out some of the coffees they have there. Beauty, bath products, personal care, things for your pets. Check out mystore.com. That is mystore.com. And of course, when you use my promo code, which is Wyatt, that's W-Y-A-T-T, you can save yourself a good bit of money on anything there. Check out mystore.com, promo code Wyatt. Thank you for tuning in to this Saturday Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox here on your favorite station. An episode this hour of Mr. and Mrs. Blandings, starring Mr. and Mrs. Cary-Grant and Betsy Drake, as it was broadcast Sunday, April 29th, 1951, in the newspapers of that Sunday, and that was 72 years ago. These were some of the headlines. The government yesterday announced a new beef price control program calling for almost a dime a pound rollback at the butcher shop by October 1st. The program called for progressively reduced ceilings for live cattle starting next month. Retail prices will remain about the same for the time being, although they will be placed under specific dollar and cent ceilings. But the announcement said they will be reduced from 4 to 5 cents a pound on August 1st, and again by the same amount of October 1st. The Office of Price Stabilization, announcing the new regulations, said that the annual savings to the American public could be about $700 million. Robert A. Vogler, pale and shaken from 17 months in the hands of Hungary's communist police, got his bartered release yesterday and stammered that mental and physical coercion attended his confession to being an American spy. Quoting, "I am sorry I did not perhaps live up to the American tradition under pressure," he murmured to reporters at the gate of his home. "I think there was some truth in my testimony, which I read last night for the first time," he told a later news conference, "but I think under the law, any testimony obtained by mental or physical pressure is not legal and is coerced." Rita Hayworth announced yesterday she wants a permanent separation from her Prince Ali Khan because she has other interests that keep him from giving her a happy and contented home life. The Hollywood glamour girl turned princess said that Ali's extensive social obligations and far-flung interests make it impossible for her to be a happy housewife. Her chief interest is the welfare of her 2 children, she said. The prince's interests include lion hunting in Africa, skiing in Switzerland, automobile racing on the Riviera, and horse racing almost anywhere, but especially in France and England. He said only Friday in Paris that he was happy with his princess and that rumors of a separation were ridiculous. President Truman yesterday broadened the federal loyalty investigation procedure to permit removal of employees or denial of government employment to persons where there is reasonable doubt as to the person's loyalty. He issued an executive order amending a 1947 regulation under which the Loyalty Review Board had to show reasonable grounds for believing a person disloyal to the United States. And the family of Mrs. Essie Fly of Medina, Tennessee run in pairs. She has 2 daughters, 2 sons, 2 granddaughters, 2 grandsons, and 2 sons-in-law. And those some of the day's news stories as reported in the newspapers of Sunday, April 29, 1951 on your radio, Mr. and Mrs. Blandings, which continues now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox.
This meeting of the Lansdale Civic Committee is now in session. Charlie Smoot will read the minutes of the last meeting.
Meeting was called to order at 8:05. Mayor Cronk presided and Fire Chief Gibbons banked the poker game. Business discussed was the purchase of a new flagpole for the school, a cash settlement of the Widdy Hickey's claim, and the motion was passed to send flour to the late Edgar Yates, city exterminator who exterminated himself. The meeting broke up promptly at 10:30 when the ace of spades fell out of Constable Arquette's sleeve.
I object. So did we. Tonight you're playing your undershirt.
Now just blame Myrna.
Order. Let's get the business over so we can get to the poker game.
Mr. Mayor, there's a serious matter I'd like to bring up.
Have to wait your turn, Mr. Blandings. First of all, we'll have the treasurer's report. Go ahead, treasurer.
Gentlemen, balance in our city treasury is approximately $126.42. Depending.
Depending on what?
Depending on how I do in the poker game tonight.
Now, great balls of fire. You mean to say you're using city funds to play poker?
I didn't mean to say any such thing.
Oh.
Just slipped out.
As long as the treasurer's here, I'd like to bring up an item. The city's got to be getting me a new uniform. What's the matter with the old one? What's the matter? Just take a look at the seat of these pants.
Say, they are wearing kind of thin.
Thin? For me, every little breeze does more than whisper Louise.
All right, Constable. We'll see what we can do. Now let's get to the poker game.
I beg your pardon, Mayor. There's a matter I'd like to bring up before this meeting.
Okay, but you're holding up the game.
Gentlemen, you are the civic fathers of this community. What are you going to do about children?
Keep having them. Now that's settled, let's get started. I'll stack the chips. 20 whites, 10 reds, 5 blues.
Gentlemen, please. This is a serious problem, a matter of deep concern to each and every one of you. Do you know what we urgently need?
2 more blue chips.
Right, 2 more. No, not 2 more blue chips. There is a crying need in this community for organized recreation for our children. We don't have a single youth organization, no supervised play. No program for carrying on this all-important work.
That's true.
All children know today they learn from soap operas, jazz records, and television. Why, you might say...
Yeah, you might say all their brain food is canned. Yeah, it's pretty good, eh?
Mr. Blandings, I'm sure you were about to make a point. Now, what is it?
Just this, Mayor Cronk. I think we in this community should do something for our children.
Well, Mr. Blandings, in me, you have an ally.
Good. Then I'm sure you will support my proposition, which is that we appoint someone to institute a youth program to, well, for example, to conduct weekly nature trips, hikes into the woods, that sort of thing.
Mr. Blandings, that's a beautiful thought. I do support your proposition. Nay, I go further. I propose that you be that person.
Good. Me? Hey, you can't do this to me.
Anyone second the motion?
Second.
But you can't do this to me.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carried. Congratulations, Mr. Blanding. And cut for the deal.
You did it to me.
Good.
April 29th, 1951, 72 years ago, Mr. and Mrs. Blandings on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. On Sunday's Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, another episode of Calling All Cars going back 88 years, April 30th, 1935, the case of the corpse in the cellar, a body found buried in the basement of a house wearing a gold ring and wearing a silver belt buckle. It's coming up on Sunday's Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. But now the conclusion of Mr. and Mrs. Blandings, starring Cary Grant and Betsy Drake, 72 years ago today, April 29th, 1951.
Well, it's happened again. Jim Blandings has deftly and efficiently put his foot in his mouth. Last night at the Lansdale Civic Committee meeting, Jim suggested, in a loud, clear voice, that somebody should conduct a program of nature trips for the children of the town. The committee quickly agreed that somebody should, and unanimously appointed Jim to the role of somebody. And so now we find Jim, keenly aware of his civic duties and responsibilities, doing what any red-blooded American citizen would do, trying to figure a way out. Let's join him at the breakfast table with Muriel.
Because I could say I broke my arm, or my leg, or maybe I could have the measles. Yeah, I could paint spots on my face.
Oh, now, really, Jim?
More coffee, Mr. Blandings?
Oh, that's an idea, Ma. Drown me in it.
Oh, Mr. Blandings, I saw your name in the paper. You were right between handy hints and the obituaries.
Tomorrow I may move over.
Told all about how you was going to take all the kids on a big hike.
Jim, I don't see...
Oh, the phone. I'll get it.
I don't see how you can get out of it, dear. It's printed in the paper.
I'll simply call the mayor and tell him I'm out of town on a business trip.
But it's your idea. You can't walk out.
I'll take a plane.
Mr. Blandings, It's a Mrs. Libby on the phone. She wants to know if her son Stanley can go on the hike.
There isn't going to be any hike. Tell her I broke my toe.
You broke your toe?
On his way to the plane while painting on spots for his measles.
Oh, that's not funny.
Oh, Daddy. Daddy, it's so wonderful about you taking us on the hike.
Oh, now, Susan, a hike isn't so much.
Oh, but it is. All the kids are talking about it. They all wish they had a wonderful daddy like you.
They do? Well.
Golly, there isn't another daddy in town who even thinks of such good things.
Well, I don't know what to say. What do you think, Muriel?
I think a plane load of measles just came in for a landing.
Well, after all, I did agree to go.
Of course, dear, and don't worry. I'll be at home preparing a hot mustard bath for your feet.
Oh, but you can't be home, Mother.
I can't?
Oh, no, I told Janie's mother you were coming to look after the girls.
Oh.
Care to borrow a slightly used measle? For it's high, high, heave, on the field artillery. Call off your numbers loud and strong.
1, 2, 3, 4. Where he'll go,
You will always know that the caissons go rolling along.
Hey! That was fun.
Well, everybody halt. We'll rest here. Say, that certainly is a fine marching song.
It's corny.
It's what?
Cornball. Strictly for the icks.
And what would a non-ick like yourself suggest?
Something hot like wham bam, alakazam, orange-colored sky.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Oh, isn't Johnny wonderful? Oh, he's real gone.
Not far enough.
I'm hungry.
Here's a sandwich, Janie.
Well, now, if you will gather around me, we will have a class in knot tying. Now, would you hand me that rope, Muriel?
Here you are.
Thank you. Now, pay attention, boys and girls. I'm going to show you the clove hitch. A very useful knot, isn't it, Muriel?
Oh, yes, I've used it I don't know how many times. When hitching clothes.
All right. On with the lesson. Now, first you take the rope. Bend one end around an object, for instance, my wrist in this fashion. Then you pass the first end through the loop like this and take the other end under and over the first end like this, and then...
Yes, dear?
Well, then if someone will kindly untangle me, we'll be on our way.
Daddy, what kind of a tree is that one?
Hold it, everyone. That tree, Susan?
Oh, yes, Daddy.
Why, that, Susan, happens to be a spruce.
A spruce? Well, it doesn't look like the one in our yard.
Oh, well, this is a very unusual species of spruce.
Yes, it has maple leaves on it.
Oh, that's the tree you meant. Quiet. Quiet, everyone. Listen to that bird. Now, who can identify that bird call?
I think it's a robin. I think it's a thrush. I think I'm hungry.
Here's a banana, Janie.
Fine students of nature. That was obviously the call of the Baltimore Oriole.
Hey, Susan! Look at me! I'm turned!
Sounds more like Tarzan's mother.
Jim, get him down from there.
Stanley, come down from there. I said come down. Now, if you do, I'll show you how to make a fire by rubbing 2 sticks together.
You what?
I'll make a fire by rubbing 2 sticks together.
Oh, brother, this I gotta see. A real fire, Mr. Blandings? A really real fire?
The really realest fire you ever saw.
Oh, boy, then we can cook something on it. I'm hungry.
Here's a candy bar, Janie.
Okay, here I am. Let's see you do your stuff.
Very well. Now, I simply take 2 sticks like this, and then I rub them together like this. Well, naturally, it doesn't work the first time.
Natch.
So I rub them even harder the second time, like this.
Uh-huh.
Then I rub them again, like this. Well, now the sticks are warm, we light them with a match.
Holy mackerel, what a character.
Come on, everybody, on with the march.
Jim, I think we really should be getting back. It's almost nighttime, you know.
Well, why, so it is.
I hope we can find our way.
Me too. I'm hungry.
Here's an orange, Janie.
Well, now, don't you worry your little heads about that. When you're with old Daniel Blandings, there's absolutely no problem. You see, I used an old scouting trick.
What's that, Jim?
Well, I don't know if you noticed it or not, Muriel, but I've been dropping bits of paper along the way. All we do to get back is follow them. Clever, huh?
Yes, but I haven't noticed any bits of paper.
He probably means these.
Stanley!
I've been picking them up.
But great Scott, Stanley, do you realize what this means? This means that we're...
Is lost the word you're groping for?
Yeah. Come on.
Hey, stop! I can't go on!
Stanley, what's the matter?
I got something in my shoe!
What is it?
My foot!
Hey, look behind you. You may find my hand. Now, come on.
Jim, are you sure we shouldn't just stop and wait for help or something?
Of course not. We're making headway. Look, I swear there's something familiar about that tree.
Yes, it's got leaves on it.
Oh, it's the spruce tree with the maple leaves.
Jim, it is. Good heavens, we must be going around in a circle.
Now, don't get panicky.
I'm scared. Me too.
But there's nothing to be frightened of. Now, look at me. I'm not worried. It isn't as though there were wild beasts lurking in the trees and bushes out there. What was that?
Stanley, I stepped on his toe.
Oh, Johnny, if you don't... Listen. Run for the trees. That is an animal.
No, Jim, listen. Voices.
Huh? Oh, yes. Thank heavens, I think they're Americans. Hey, fellas, over here.
It's Constable Arquette with the search party.
Well, howdy, folks. Hello.
Constable, am I glad to see you. Why, you're here with a search party almost before we got lost.
Mr. Blandings, the Red Cross don't wait till the dams bust before they get ready. Yeah, the night you said you was leading this hike, I started wrinkling up my nose like a bloodhound.
But how in the world were you able to find us way out here?
Just followed the trail.
What trail?
Sandwich papers, banana peels, candy wrappers, orange peels.
Janie, your stomach saved us. Janie, do you hear?
I'm hungry.
Here again are Cary Grant and Betsy Drake.
Jim, now that we're home and the children are up in bed asleep, I want you to promise me that you'll never take them on another hike.
Don't worry. I feel as if I walked 1,000,000 miles. I'm dead. The next time I take the kids on a trip, it's going to be aboard a TWA Constellation. That's the only way to travel.
Sounds good to me.
And you know, children under 12 travel at half fare on TWA. And babies under 2 go for nothing. And besides that, the pilot always knows where they're going.
You talked me into it. Where will we go?
I know a good place.
Where?
To bed. My feet are killing me.
Good night, dear.
Good night, everybody.
Tune in next week, same time, same station, for Mr. and Mrs. Blandings, starring Cary Grant and Betsy Drake. Brought to you by Trans World Airlines. Across the U.S. and overseas, you can depend on TWA. Betsy Drake appears through the courtesy of RKO Pictures and David O. Selznick. Watch for the next Selznick release, Gypsy Blood, starring Jennifer Jones and produced in Technicolor. Constable Arquette was played by Cliff Arquette. Elvia Ullman was Maud. Also in our cast were Patty King, Earl Ross, Ken Christie, Ralph Moody, Sammy Ogg, Stuffy Singer, and Norma Jean Nielsen. Tonight's show is written by Charles Stewart and Mort Lockman, directed by Warren Lewis, and transcribed in Hollywood. Don Stanley speaking.
From 72 years ago, April 29th, 1951, Mr. and Mrs. Blandings on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Visit our webpage, classicradio.stream. Stream our shows, learn about building a classic radio collection of your own. Contact me, find our social media links, and if you like what we do, you can buy me a coffee. The Buy Me a Coffee money helps us acquire additional classic radio collections. That's classicradio.stream. Thanks for tuning in. Tell all your friends the greatest radio shows of all time are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station.